Welcome back to this episode of Thriving Beyond. Today we have with us Joel Boggess. Joel is a highly decorated entrepreneur. Joel is a contributor and has been featured in Inc., Success.com, and the Huffington Post, to name a few, and also has done major media on television and radio. Joel is a best-selling author of Finding Your Voice. Finding Your Voice hit the #1 spot on Amazon for success, happiness, and in the self-esteem categories. Joel is a highly decorated podcaster. He's won awards for the most inspirational podcast of 2014 and 2015 inside of Podcasters Paradise. I'm honored to have Joel with us today. He's going to share his story of how back when he was 5 years old, something very tragic happened. His story of inspiration is one to remember. Stay tuned as we share more, and make sure to head on over to thrivingbeyondbook.com and pre-order your book if you've not done so. Head over to thrivingbeyondbook.com and pre-order your book. Pre-order ends October 31st.
Welcome to Thriving Beyond, the podcast with stories of thriving through when the obstacles are far from few. Here's your host, whose own story has been featured in Chicken Soup for the Soul, Vidal Cisneros Jr.
Welcome to this new episode of Thriving Beyond with Joel Boggess. You might have heard of Joel. He has a top-ranked podcast. He's a best-selling author and speaker. Listen in as Joel shares his inspirational story with us here on Thriving Beyond. Thank you so much for joining us, Joel. Welcome to Thriving Beyond, Joel.
Vidal, this is a pleasure to be here. I've been looking forward to this interview all day long. And you know what? I started in radio. My gosh, it's been 27 years. 27 years ago I started. And you know what? With all of that experience, I still don't take for granted the invitations to be a guest on other people's shows. So thank you for the opportunity. And there's no place that I'd rather be than right here on your show with you on Thriving Beyond.
The honor's all ours, brother. So let's jump into the first question. If you could sum up what you do in one sentence or less, what would that be, Joel?
Sure. I help entrepreneurs share their voice and grow their business.
Right on. So is there a morning ritual or anything that you implement in your routine to ignite your day? I know you love fitness, but give us anything that you really ignites you and lights you up as a morning ritual or daily ritual.
You bet. Well, one of the very first things that I do after I've been up for 30 minutes to an hour is I do hit the gym. And I work out, and I set my clock for 45 minutes, and I hit it hard for 45 minutes. And that is pretty much a daily ritual. But before that, Vidal, and maybe this will provide hopefully a little bit more value, I spend some time, going over my affirmations, going over my declarations, my strong statements, whatever you want to call it. But I go over that because I'm a big believer in, you've got to come up with an antidote to your negative self-talk. And I think the mistake that a lot of people have made is that they realize some of the things that they tell themselves that bring them down, and then they kind of rewrite those phrases in a more positive light. And while in theory that makes sense, and intellectually that makes sense, if there's no emotion behind your words, if there's no spark, then they're just words on a page. So I spent a little bit of time really coming up with the language and the words that move me deeply. And those are the things that I say to myself over and over again. When I'm sitting on the porch drinking coffee, sometimes in my office, or even on the way to the gym, or maybe once I've even already gotten there. But that is vital right there, is to set my mind or reset my mind on those truths about me, my potential, and the value that I have to bring.
Love it, Joel. Thank you so much for sharing that. And here on Thriving Beyond, we love to share the inspirational stories, especially when we're going through those tough adversity moments and our toughest life storms. So and I know you have such an incredible story, Joel, so I'm completely excited and enthused and elated because you're here to share it. So if you could unpack that tough life storm that you faced and give us the global view and then bring us down to the curbside view so we can really dig in deep into your story.
Sure. I really appreciate you asking me this particular question because I like talking about what happened to me when I was 5, and I was out on a nature hike with my dad and some of his friends. And as the adults kind of blazed their way through the trail, we were in the middle of the Texas Hill Country. I, like any 5-year-old boy would do, kind of drifted away from the adults, and I set off on my own adventure. And I was with a couple of older kids too, actually. And we ended up climbing this hill, and right next to the hill, running parallel to it, was what looked like to me, remember I was 5, set of monkey bars. And I climbed on it just like any kid would do. And these weren't monkey bars. This was actually a bridge, Vidal, that stretched over a gorge, over a gorge that was 30 feet deep. And I got on this bridge and I ran to the middle, right where it extended the most between landmass and landmass. And I laid down on my stomach and I called down to my dad, trying to get his attention. And about that time, a rumbling came over my right shoulder. I was laying on my stomach, so it was over my right shoulder. And what that rumbling was, it was about a quarter to a half a mile down the track, and it was actually a train. Because what I was laying on, Vidal, wasn't just a suspension bridge. It was a suspension bridge that was laid with railroad tracks, because it was a railroad trestle. And at the end of the day, the train had screeched to a halt. And somehow, I don't really know how because the details are sketchy, but I ended up at the bottom of that gorge at 30 feet after falling. And I had so much blood loss that by the time the rescue team were able to find us, and this is 42 years ago, no GPS, no cell phones. They couldn't even start an IV on my little 5-year-old arm because all of the blood vessels had collapsed. But somehow through heroic, divine, and medical intervention, I was able to make that 45-minute drive in the back of an ambulance to downtown San Antonio, where I would spend the next 3 weeks of my life fighting for it in Santa Rosa Children's Intensive Care Unit. And when I came out of that coma, that is when the most significant relaunch happened for me. And it was a relaunch of recovery, of healing for everyone involved. And it was a relaunch of relearning my own possibilities and what I was able to do. And there was a lot of effects that came from that accident and injury, and a lot of blessings that came from it as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I've heard your story many times, and I can't imagine going through that as a young boy like that, having a just severe concussion and brain injury. And
it was actually 3 skull fractures, so it was a little bit deep, a little bit more serious than a concussion.
Wow.
But I thank God for the rescue team that was there in the hospital, and they got more than they bargained for when they showed up for work that morning. But they came through like champs, and I'm so grateful that there were people on duty that were able to keep it together and keep me together.
Right. Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that. So is there an aha moment back then that you can remember or recall that helped empower you through that storm?
I don't know exactly what it was. That's a great question, by the way. But over time, and the recovery, Vidal, took a long time, up through my young adulthood years. And I'm 47 now. And you know what? There's still some of the lingering effects. But throughout the recovery process, I finally understood that, I've just got to do what I know how to do. And I've got to be true to the person that I am created to be. And I need to quit worrying about what other people think I should be and what the version of success that other people have might be. Now, that's still hard, and I'm human, just like everyone listening to this show. So, you know what? Sometimes I don't even take my own advice. And I look at the Facebook pictures and the social media pictures, and sometimes I kind of drift a little bit downhill, as we all do. But in the end, I keep my mind set on, you know what, I've just got to do and live the life that I was born to live. And really, that's all that we can all do. So the aha moment didn't happen in an instant, which some of your guests might talk about. It actually happened over time. And that is that, you know what? It's not about comparison. It's about completion. And completion into who you are at the cellular level, at a deep level.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
This is good stuff. So what's some of the best advice that you've received from a coach, a mentor, maybe a family member or a friend that helps you shift or has helped you shift out of some of those adversity or challenges that you faced?
One of my mentors, his name is Joe Calloway. And a lot of people will recognize that name if they're big into reading business books or they're speakers like I am. And he is a mentor to me on multiple levels. And his most famous book, and you'll have probably heard this title before, it's called Becoming a Category of One. Becoming a Category of One. And I've read that book so many times. It's become like a textbook to me. Not because it's written like one, because it's not, but because there's so much meat in there for not just entrepreneurs and speakers, but for, work at home parents and second half students and people that are beginning again after, a dramatic or a traumatic life event. But one of the things that Joe said to me is he said, and this is right when I was getting ready to launch my book, actually my most recent book, it's called Finding Your Voice. And Joe said, you need to be absolutely clear with other people on how you want them to help you with your book launch. You have to be 100% clear that you want them to, buy your book or promote it on social media or email their list or, whatever you want them to do. And then I said, Joe, why would they help me? Who am I? I'm a brand new author. I was at the time anyhow, and I didn't have as much experience as I have now. Thankfully, it's been a good experience and we've, gotten to a certain level, but at the time I didn't have any standing or right to ask for help from top tier people. And I said, why would they help me, Joe? And Joe said very clearly to me, because someone helped them. And when they were nobodies, when they were just starting out, they reached out to people that were 5, 10, maybe 15 steps ahead of them, and they asked for help. And that's what catapulted them to that higher level. And you know what? I took that to heart, Vidal. And even though I didn't know what I was doing, I took out my A list, right? We all have an A list, right? And I blew the dust off of it and I started making phone calls and I started sending out emails. And to make a long story short, I guess I'm not doing a very good job at that, but my book, Finding Your Voice, not only hit #1 on Amazon, but it actually hit #1 on Amazon in all 3 of its categories: success, self-esteem, and happiness, on the same day in the same hour. Now that's crazy, and I don't say it to impress you, but I want to impress upon you that probably never would have happened had I not been willing to, blow the dust off and maybe make some connections that, I was probably scared to make, but I did anyways. That's the greatest advice. Long answer to it, but ask for help from people that are a few steps ahead of you because someone helped them.
I love that. I admire you so much for your candor and your transparency. Thank you, Joel. And if you could give us a bite-sized morsel of your 3-step formula to help Thrive Nation listening get beyond some of their adversity and relaunch their life.
Yes, and I'm so glad you've made it simple for the people that are listening to Thriving Beyond. 3-step formula. Doesn't come any more simple than that. And it's just simple. It's clarity plus confidence equals direction. Easy way to remember that, C plus C equals D. Here's what this means. Clarity, who you are as a person, as an entrepreneur, as a parent, as a churchgoer, as a community member, who you are and what you are after, the clarity of who you are and what you're after. I'm after, becoming a best-selling author. I'm after becoming a podcaster. That type of clarity will lead to confidence. Clarity plus confidence leads to direction. So what does this mean? And how can you apply it today? Well, get clarity on who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. Not the laundry list of 20 things that you have to get done today. We all have that list too. But the one thing that you're trying to get accomplished in the big picture, in the big plan. And once you get that type of crystal clarity, then the confidence comes with it. And then you're able to take that first or second, third step. And when you do that, doing is the new planning. You figure out direction. Here's why. Because doing is the new planning. Doing is the new planning. And what I mean by that is once you take a step, that's the do, then you're able to kind of look around and make an educated guess on, well, okay, where's the next step? Should it be this direction? Should it be this direction? Should it be straight ahead? That's how you move forward. I hope that helps somebody.
Well, I know that did. Just to highlight again, clarity plus confidence equals direction.
Every time.
Love it. So let's dive a little bit deeper and really dig in deep to this question. If 100 years from today, there was a statue that was erected in your name, what would be the one legendary thing that would tell others on that statue, the one thing that you would be remembered for, that would stand the test of time for 100 years?
I actually have my eulogy right here in front of me. I kind of knocked over a coffee cup reaching for it, so hopefully that didn't come across. But this is what it says. Because he lived, people have received healing from generational wounds, clarity from mixed messages, confidence from weakened conditions, and direction from what was once a lost cause. And my eulogy is a little bit longer than that, but that's the last paragraph right there. And that's what I want people to remember, that he was a provider of clarity, confidence, direction. There's those three things again. And because he lived, I now have that.
Thank you so much. I definitely see that happening already for you, especially with all the success that you've had. And if you could share where our audience can best connect with you, we'd be honored to hear.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for the opportunity, Vidal. Best place to go is ReLaunchShow.com. And that's where all of our resources are, all of our podcasts and contact information. And to subscribe to the show, which frankly I would prefer that you do, give it a listen, you can go to relaunchshow.com/subscribe. And that's where all of the subscription options are: iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, and the other ones, and iHeartRadio as well. relaunchshow.com/subscribe.
There you have it. That will be in the episode description. Thank you so much, Joel, for joining us on Thriving Beyond. And if you have not pre-ordered your book, head on over to thrivingbeyondbook.com. And thank you to everybody that has donated and already purchased their Thriving Beyond from Tragedy to Triumph book, and also purchased some of the perks. Cannot wait for this book to get out into your hands, as proceeds will benefit two nonprofits, two charities, Halo Inc., homeless assistance living organization that is local in my area, and PTS Faces. So if you have not purchased your book and pre-ordered your Thriving Beyond from Tragedy to Triumph copy, please head on over to thrivingbeyondbook.com and order it today. Pre-order ends October 31st. This has been another episode. And remember, as always, keep going, keep growing, and keep thriving, because it's way better than just surviving.
Thanks for listening. For recaps and to claim bonus gifts, head over to thrivingbeyondpodcast.com. Keep thriving.